Hello everyone, this is Marc Sabatella from Mastering MuseScore, and welcome to the MuseScore Café. For those of you who are new, this is my weekly series. We talk about some aspect of making music using MuseScore, all the ins and outs of using the program, where we've been, where we're going, answering questions, and so forth. Usually I have a particular theme that we talk about every week, and today's theme is basically MuseScore 4.2.1, which just came out this morning on schedule. So I was very happy to see that. I had indicated last week I thought it would be out this week, and in the newsletter I said I thought it would be out this week. So I'm very happy that actually happened. So it is now available for download, and so we're going to talk about why you'd want to do it. There's not actually any new features in 4.2.1 compared to 4.2. It's bug fixes, right? And so I'll talk about a couple of the bugs that were fixed just because that's part of what's there. And then we'll maybe take a little tour backwards and just talk about everything that's been new lately. And then take a step even further back and talk about what's been new over many years and just some of the things that MuseScore can do that you might not know about. So just think of it as this is a nice tour of where we're at right now. And if you got some questions, feel free to be asking in here. So first thing I want to do is make sure that if you probably those of you who downloaded it, you probably had to do that directly, right? You didn't have like a notification within the program that an update was available. Usually they don't put that out right away. I want to see if there's an announcement in here, but someone let me know if you did actually get a notification about it, because I'd be curious about that. But this is the actual announcement in the MuseScore forum, so I'm going to post this into the chat here. Oh, you were notified. Okay. Were you notified by email? Okay, there is a notification in the program now. That is good to know. As I said, often that won't be the case. Often they hold off on that until it's had a day or so just to make sure there's no disasters or anything. But so far, so good. I've been using it all morning. Yes, therefore, if you're getting the notification, you're probably already well aware. So I want to go to the download page. So for those of you who are getting the notification and able to do the update from within the program, great. If you don't already have MuseScore 4.2 installed or MuseScore 4 in general installed, I do want to just show you where else you can get this from. So did I just post that link into the chat? Yes, I posted the chat in the chat the announcement. I now want to actually go to the download page here and point out a couple of things. So if you're just kind of installing this on a new system, so the the update notification isn't what you want, I want to show you a couple things here about the download page. So on Windows, you'll see Download for Windows. This is the main thing that you'll want, and it will download a program called MuseHub, which is actually then the installer, right? MuseHub.exe. It'll install MuseHub, and then that will then allow you to install MuseScore as well as Muse Sounds, right? So that's what you would normally want. Same thing on Mac. On Mac, you click the Download for Mac button, and it will download MuseHub, which in turn will allow you to download MuseScore as well as Muse Sounds. For people who aren't aware, Muse Sounds is the optional but free orchestral and guitar now library for sounds that's really kind of a quantum leap forward in what's possible for sound libraries. So you'll want to install that, but it is big. It is big. For sure. It's like 15 gigabytes or more now. On Mac, on Linux, the situation is slightly different. You'll see where it says download app image here. This is going to download MuseScore itself as an app image file. And then you'll want to download that, make it executable, and then run it from the command line with the install option. You'll type whatever the file name of the app image file that you downloaded, space, install, and that will then install it. But you'll see there's a separate program called Muse Sounds Manager, which is like MuseHub Lite. It doesn't do some of the other things that MuseHub does. It just downloads Muse Sounds. So you'll want to download either the .deb version or the RPM version, depending on which Linux distribution you have. So if people have questions about that, feel free to ask. I can try to answer, but I'm not like an expert on all this distribution. I use Linux myself, but I never remember which distributions use Deb. Deb is Debian, and I know that applies to Debian itself as well as Ubuntu and a number of others, but RPM is needed for other Linux distributions. So that's where to get it from. This is now the first release. I also want to go to GitHub. I'm going to go to the GitHub release page here because I'm going to show you. This is the actual GitHub page. GitHub is where the source for MuseScore is maintained and where the releases actually live. When it downloads those files, when you go to MuseScore.org and download from there, it's really grabbing files off of here. I want to show you all the different versions that are available here to make sure that, because some of these are new. So this is the main Windows file, the MSI, that's Microsoft Installer, I think it stands for, right? So that's the thing you would install that will then install MuseScore on Windows. This one here that says DMG, that is the main Macintosh version, right? This version here that says x8664.appimage, this is the one for Linux systems that have Intel-based processors. New for 4.2.1 is ARM support. So there's 32-bit ARM support and 64-bit ARM support. The 64-bit ARM is Arch. It's called AArch64. The 32-bit one is called ARM v7L for some reason, some historical reason having to do with the ARM processor and how it was named in the early days. But anyhow, those versions here for Linux machines on ARM processors, and I mention this because there's two important use cases here. One is Raspberry Pi, which is a pretty popular device among the kind of hacker community that runs on an ARM processor. So Raspberry Pi will want one of these two versions, depending on whether it's 32 or 64-bit. And also Chromebooks, which many of you know is what I use. My Chromebook is Intel-based. Most of the higher-end Chromebooks are, but there's definitely ARM-based Chromebooks that are usually the lower cost options, and those will be able to use these app image files. So that's a little bit about what. Oh, and then the other one to know about is this guy here, the PAF. That's Portable Application Format, I think, something like that. This is a version for Windows that you can download and run directly without actually installing. It's going to say something about installing, but that's really just setting up some folders. It's not really installing on your system. So this is an option for those of you who are like students at a school where maybe you're using a school computer that doesn't allow you to install software. This is the guy you want, the portable version. Or if you're using a computer at a library or any other shared computer where you don't have admin privileges, this will allow you to use MuseScore without installing it fully, that portable version. So that's all mumbo jumbo about how to get it going. And again, if you have issues in the process, let me know in here and I can see if we can help with that. More likely we'll try to help offline. But now I'm going to flip back to MuseScore and just talk about some of what's going on. So I'm going to, the other thing to know is if you're using, there's a beta version of MuseHub, you have to go to like musehub.com. Actually, let me go to let me get that link in here too. Musehub.com is a website that you will rarely ever need to visit, but it is there, and I'll show you why you might possibly want to visit musehub.com. Musehub.com is where you can download MuseHub itself separately from downloading on MuseScore.org, and normally you wouldn't need to do that. You would just download it using that first link. However, there's a beta version of MuseHub always available, and this beta version will give you access to some features of MuseSounds before they are released in full. And this is the case right now. I'm going to show you something in a second that most of you have seen before because it's been the case for a few weeks now. Um, if you have the beta version of MuseHub or MuseSounds Manager, you will get access to some new features in MuseSounds. There's no actual new sounds available, but check this out. Uh, you may remember for the longest time I didn't use the MuseSounds for the MuseScore Café. I used MS Basic, the old sound font, simply because it couldn't play that high note. That note right there was not available in MuseSounds. Well, now it is. And I think brass sounds are extended even if you're not using the beta. I think there was just an update like yesterday. So some of you may have seen that already. So if you run MuseHub, you will probably get an update to Muse Brass if you haven't run it recently or if it's not been running in the background. And that should give you higher notes. So yes, that is a high note and it is therefore loud. That's D flat concert. That's D flat written. Right? It goes up to F. It goes up to F concert, which is G written. I forgot this is concert pitch score. So yes, that's concert. So let's listen to just that trumpet. So hear that fall? That is actually sampled from a real trumpet player falling. Not falling downstairs, but doing, a fall on the horn where you do a half valve and lip it down thing. So when I talk about MuseSounds being kind of a quantum leap forward, one of the things that is true about it is that things like that are not just digitally emulated. Any other sound font in the world, if you write a fall for a note, it's going to play that note and then just digitally alter the sound to bring the pitch down, and it's going to sound very artificial. But in MuseSounds, those falls are very real. Yeah, that is just fun. Not all notes on all instruments have those samples, and so sometimes you won't hear that, but here's the whole horn section. So the trombone fell a little faster than the other, but that sounds like horn players actually doing falls, all at their own individual pacing and so forth, depending on what note they're falling from. Excuse me. Sorry about that. Coffee went down wrong. Oof. Okay. So that's two of the things that aren't actually in 4.2.1 exactly, but are kind of being released in conjunction with it as part of MuseSounds. The fact that now the range is higher, and those falls, some of those falls were there before. There's more of them sampled now, I guess, is the deal. So that's something. One of the things also, so we talked about Muse Guitar, at least I mentioned briefly that Muse Guitar is a thing, that came out with 4.2. And so now when I play this, this is using Muse Guitar, and that's a muted sound, right? Up bends also. So that's Muse Guitar there. You asked about up bends, and yes, sometimes they're sampled and sometimes they're not. Let's hear this one. I think this one is not, but this one is. Right? So some of the bends are sampled, others are not. I can't remember if the trombone one is. No, that one's not. So so if it's sampled, it will be there, and if not, it won't. That's the deal. So check out the electric bass part here too. So that bend up, you could hear the actual frets. Now, originally I wrote this for fretless bass, but it was too cool. I just liked the sound of that better, actually. I could switch it back to fretless bass if I wanted, but I sort of became enamored of the sound of those of that fret sliding and decided to leave that in place. So so that's one of the other things that's new with Muse Sounds, which came out with 4.2. Uh, let's talk now about some of the bugs that have been fixed lately. So if some of you had either installed 4.2 and had run into some bugs, or maybe didn't install because you heard about some problem or other, I want to show you what's been fixed. And I don't want to make a big deal. I mean, there's a whole lot of like little minor things that were fixed, but there were three things in particular that were fixed that I think people will want to know about, because they actually also make things better than they were in before MuseScore 4.2 also. So if I create a new score here, I'll go ahead and do a grand staff. If I add some notes, and then put a fermata. No, I'm not going to. First, I'm going to put a caesura. I'm going to put a caesura after that note. So on the breaths and pauses palette, I add the caesura. This now plays back correctly, which, pause, resume, right? So that worked before. It broke in 4.2. It is now fixed in 4.2.1. Now, the great thing about that fix is that it also comes with a fix that was in 4.2, and this is the first release that's really done justice to this. If I put a fermata on this note here, and then put 4 quarter notes down here, and put a fermata on that note, I believe, if I haven't done it right, if I've done this correctly, this will play back reasonably. So, is that exactly what you intended? I don't know what someone might intend doing that, but at least they didn't get out of sync, is my observation. They didn't get out of sync. Previous versions of MuseScore really struggled with multiple fermatas on different beats, because this one's on beat 3, that one's on beat 4, because the rhythms are different, and no version of MuseScore has ever given you full control over exactly how that works. They've all had different limitations, but MuseScore 4 until 4.2 has been not good at all. And now finally it's probably a little better than MuseScore 3, still plenty of room for improvement. And thank you, Frank, for the reminder. As soon as someone told me that N was the plural ending, my high school German came back to me, and I remembered that. So Violinen, violine, violinen, fagate. Oh, and for nouns that don't end in vowels, adding just the E instead of EN sometimes, right? So yes, thank you. It's adding the N that is the common plural ending, in the same way that S is the common plural ending in English, but there's always exceptions, right? So yes, thank you for that reminder. All right, so I want to now I'm definitely going to, open up for questions and comments in here, because I don't have like a lot of specific things that I want to make sure that I cover in this. It's going to be just sort of a tour, but I want to mention about another bug that was fixed that had bothered a lot of people. One was, if you go to continuous view and you had a very large score, this score is obviously not very large, but if you had a very large score and you were in continuous view, these ties would sometimes, the ties towards the end of the score would get enormous, basically. They would just get super duper thick. Crazy thick, so thick they blotted out half your score. So for 4.2, when it came out, we were having to tell people, oh, switch from continuous view back to page view, or you could reduce the score size so that your score wasn't physically so big, and that would work around the bug. Anyhow, not an issue anymore. Ties are normal. The other thing, and this one surprised me, because I didn't even know people were doing this, I'm curious how many of you might do this. If you have notes, I still haven't fully recovered from swallowing that coffee funny. Oh, in continuous view, that is sometimes the selection rectangle can get weird, right? Um, let's take a look at these notes here now. If I select all those notes and then drag them down, they all move together. Now, I have been using MuseScore for 12 years, and I don't know that I've ever tried to do that. Normally, if I want to transpose notes, I use the cursor keys, which transposes them chromatically, or Shift Alt plus the cursor keys, which transposes them diatonically, or Control and the cursor keys, which transposes by octave. And the nice thing about that is, you can select, whatever passage you want and very quickly hone in on the exact interval of transposition. But anyhow, that drag thing has been in MuseScore for a long time. It's just never really been anything really advertised. That broke for 4.2 and is now fixed, is why I'm mentioning that. Okay, so I'm going to now flip over to some music on MuseScore.com because I want to talk about a little bit about my journey of using MuseScore. So some of you have heard bits of this story before, but I'm going to recount what's relevant here. This here is a blog article that I wrote February 5th, 2011. So, this was 13 years ago. This is when MuseScore 1 released. And I was a newcomer to MuseScore at the time. I was coming from Finale. And the story here is, I had a student tell me about MuseScore because I was looking for accessible music software that I could use with a blind student. MuseScore was not yet, but she told me about this, said you should check it out. I did and said, wow, it's very cool. It's not accessible yet, but I think I want to learn more about it, maybe get involved. And this was the beginning of that. So, and of course, now MuseScore is highly accessible. I'll talk about that a little bit more today. So I wrote up this whole article about my experience discovering MuseScore. I mean, discover, right? It had been around for a few years before me, but this was the first official release. This was 1.0. Before that, it was 0.7, 0.8, 0.9, etc. This was the first official release where they said, all right, we think we actually have something now that's worth releasing to the world. And I sort of started using it maybe a few months before that. And what happened is, basically 3 weeks before the release, I got a commission to do a composition for a particular ensemble called the Playground Jazz Ensemble. Or the Playground Jazz Project. The Playground Ensemble is a modern classical ensemble, and they wanted to do a jazz concert where they took some of their modern classical stuff and brought in jazz elements, and I was one of the people commissioned to write a piece for it. So I decided I was going to use MuseScore for this, even though I had basically never used it before. I just had a student tell me about it, and I poked around a little bit. I had never used it, and I then, over the course of 3 weeks, completed this commission using MuseScore. And I always knew, well, worst case, I'll export it to Music XML because that was a thing and finish it in Finale. I actually started it in Finale because it was started as an orchestral piece, which you've also seen before, and I'm going to show you that a little bit later too. But this here is the MuseScore 1 version of my piece, Dusk. So this is basically the first piece of music I ever wrote using MuseScore. So I'm going to play a little bit of it for you here. I don't know if this is literally the MuseScore 1 playback or if something has changed, but it's certainly not current playback. Let's check out a little bit of this score. I'm going to just skip to a part that's a little denser in the piece. Let's go up to about here. All right, there you get the idea. This is, not. I mean, I was impressed at the time that the playback worked at all and that I could do what I could do here. But compared to Finale's playback, it was very behind the curve. And gradually over the years, MuseScore's playback has gotten better and better to the point where now MuseScore's playback is far better than Finale's. So I have that score loaded up into MuseScore. So this is the MuseScore 1 version of that. And so I want to talk about a few things here and talk about just how far we've come. So first of all, the overall look of this score has gotten way better. And I did a lot of tweaking to this score to make it readable. But things like the way these slurs are bumping into things, I didn't try to fix all those. They're colliding with things all over the place. The rehearsal mark colliding with the clef, right? All sorts of stuff going on here that is not good, despite the fact that I did a fair amount of adjustment to try to improve that kind of stuff. Also, this is not the font that I actually used. I think I used a font on my computer that is not on MuseScore.com, and this remains true. If you upload a score that's using a non-standard font that's only on your system, when you upload to MuseScore.com, you won't see that font. So some of the text here looks a little odd simply because that's not the font that I had chosen. I don't even remember what font I used for that. But in any case, for a version 1.0 of an open source program, I was very impressed that I was able to do what I did here. Yeah, I found it very impressive, and so that's why I wrote up that whole blog article. But if I go into MuseScore 4 now, there's a lot of things that are better. First of all, the font now, it's using the default font in MuseScore now, which is a lot better. The slurs are no longer colliding with things all over the place. Like, they're avoiding the accidentals and doing things that they would need to do. I'm going to play that same passage. It was this guy right here. I'm going to play that same passage now in MuseScore 4, and hopefully it will cooperate and not get all stuttery because I'm live streaming. If it does, I apologize. Oop. Okay, so what's that whistle sound? It's because drum sets have changed since MuseScore 1. And the way I did slash notation is now vastly improved, but the old slash notation is no longer the way to do slash notation. So first thing I need to do here is just mute the drums because there wasn't going to be anything useful in there. But that's where those whistles were, my attempts to enter slash notation using MuseScore 1. Let's hear this again. So, improved sounds. And I haven't tweaked anything here, but check out that right there. That is written with 2 slashes because 2 slashes is the way you write 16th notes. I didn't actually mean that. I really meant unmeasured tremolo, which I should have done with 3 slashes. So I'm going to redo that now with 3 slashes and let you hear that. And then you get the actual tremolo thing, right? You get the real tremolo sound. Again, because these are actual good sampled sounds. They sampled tremolos and things to produce these sounds. And that is a Muse Sounds improvement there. A MuseScore 4 improvement in general is notice how easily I was able to solo that staff. I just select a measure on that staff, and then that staff is soloed. So that's kind of a nice feature. Remember how I did that with the horns in the MuseScore Café? I selected just those three horns and selected it. So you don't need to use the mixer anymore, since MuseScore 4 came out, in order to solo instruments. If you want to hear just these four instruments here, then I can hear just those. Um, so, there's that. The next thing I want to show you, though, is I want to go back to the original orchestra version. And I wish I had like an easy way to show you finale and what the finale version was like, but I don't. But I'm going to show you now, and some of you have seen this, but I know if I try to play this score using MuseScore on my computer while I'm live streaming, it won't be able to keep up. I want to play the orchestra version of that same passage now using Muse Sounds. Actually, I'll start it slightly earlier. So, yeah, the sounds that you, and this I have to tell you, I remember how it sounded coming out of Finale when I originally wrote this piece, 15 years ago, or gosh, almost 20 years ago now. That's crazy. And I liked how the sounds came out of Finale. I thought that was pretty impressive at the time, but this is far better. This is far better. And I have an actual orchestra recording of it because the University Orchestra performed it. And yeah, this is a very, very convincing reproduction of that. So anyhow, one of the great things about MuseScore as it exists now is that ability to create orchestral scores that with very little tweaking of anything, in fact, there's not a lot of tweaking possible, it's going to sound very realistic out of the box. So that's something that I wanted to make sure that you all got to hear, just what some of the things that are possible here. Speaking of some of the things that are possible, I want to just open a couple other scores of mine that'll just show some other aspects. So next thing I want to show you is Reunion, which, I use this as a demo all the time. Going back to that blog article, let me go back to that blog article for a second because it's a nice story. I wrote this article. And I think I had posted to the forum, half a dozen times at that point, but I was, not particularly like, I wasn't like who I am now. I was just a random user who posted occasionally to the forum, but I wasn't really a MuseScore user. This is what converted me, was this completing this project in MuseScore 1. The day after I posted that, the guy who was kind of their main community manager person at the time, Thomas Bonte, and I wish I could pronounce names better, but he contacted me and said, "Wow, that was a really nice blog article you wrote. You really have a way of writing. By the way, we're developing an app, and we need help writing the help files and stuff. We need a native English speaker because no one on our team is a native English speaker. Would you help with that?" And so that was my actual introduction to being at all involved. Oh yeah. Let me give you a link to the article. Here's a link to the article. There you go. Yeah, that was my first introduction to being involved in MuseScore, was helping write the help files that went with the mobile apps, the app for iPhone. There wasn't an Android app yet. And then eventually I started doing, I think the next thing I did was help with that Muse Jazz font to make sure some symbols like codas and things like that were available, and I did a terrible job of designing the coda for that, which thankfully has been, or the senyo for that was horrible, but at least it was there, and now there's a better one. But I did some work on that font, and then I did some work on chord symbols so that you could have a little more flexibility in how you entered your chord symbols. And these were all things that I talked about in this article about, well, these were the things that weren't quite as good as Finale. Linked parts was another one that wasn't there yet. Like if I wanted to change something in that score, I would then have to make the same change in the part later. I would have to do that manually. Linked parts weren't a thing yet. They got added with MuseScore 2 several years after this. So anyhow, that was my first introduction to being involved at all in the MuseScore project. But then one of the next ones was, I think for MuseScore 1.2, they contacted me again and said, we want there to be a demo score that shows up. Well, there was a demo score. When you fired up MuseScore back then, you would see pictures at an exhibition. You'd see whatever, Gates of Kiev, the Mussorgsky, bum, 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 bum. That whole thing, the piano, the original piano verse setting of that would show up as the demonstration score, and they decided they wanted a score that was A, unique to MuseScore, and B, that actually showed off the program a little better, because that piece didn't really take advantage of many of the features. So I want to just take a quick look through this piece here. For old time's sake, I'm going to play it. Some of you who have been around for a while may remember. So before I play it, I'll finish that story by saying they approached me and said, we want a demo score. Would you be willing to write a demo score that will show up then when people start MuseScore? So for several years, when you started MuseScore, this was the music you would hear. And the instructions I was given was, we want this score to be for piano, to be 1 page long, so that no page turns are required. You can just see everything on screen at once. But we want as much bling, was the term I remember being used. A lot of bling. They wanted all the features of MuseScore to show up in the score. They wanted to show off what the program could do. And back at MuseScore 1.2, it couldn't do half of what it can do now. But looking at this score now, you can see it could do a lot, because everything in this score I was able to do in MuseScore 1. It just took more effort. I had to do a lot of manual adjustments of things and so forth to get reasonable results. So I took it upon myself to write this 1 page piano score that would show off as many features of MuseScore: time signature changes, key signature changes, double bars, tempo changes, slurs, multiple voices, triplets, articulations, crescendos, cross staff notation, octave markings, ties that break up because there's basically an opaque graphic here that's covering up those ties. That's still the one hack that's here that MuseScore doesn't support more directly. So I wanted a score that would show off all those features, but hopefully sound like music also. So anyhow, here's Reunion, and then I'll just walk through some of the more features here. Whoops, let's actually go to the beginning of the score. Here we go. So there you have it, the demo score for MuseScore 1.2. I'm actually going to post the link to that also. Let's find the link to that here. Simply because I think of that piece as being, it's a good demo, but it's also a great practice piece. If you want to practice, get a handle on using MuseScore, try to enter that into MuseScore yourself and you'll get a chance to try out a whole ton of features. So when I talk about giving a tour, let's talk about what this score shows. So yes, obviously I have, well, I'll just start at the top and move down. So the score is for piano. It's got a key signature, time signature. It's got a pickup measure, right? So it's has a pickup measure. So it's, the first measure only has the 2 beats. It has a tempo marking that shows both text and a metronome marking. Right off the bat, we get multiple voices, right? We have the stem up and stem down notes on the same staff, at 2 different rhythms at the same time. So I wanted to show off multiple voices. We have a slur, multiple slurs. We have places where the multiple voices actually cross each other, and this used to require workarounds to get this to display reasonably, but now it all works with no workarounds, just works. There's tempo changes here, più mosso, meaning go a little faster. Time signature change from 4/4 to 3/4 for a couple of bars. This measure, check it out, has 3 voices on that top staff. The A sustains, the B here comes in on beat 2, then that moving line also comes in on beat 2. So 3 separate voices on that top staff and 2 voices on the bottom staff there. Then I've got I wanted to make sure there were triplets in the score. So there's triplets, there's articulation markings, the tenuto markings there. The tempo change again, arpeggio markings. Oh, here's a thing now that didn't exist until 4.2. It is now possible. There used to be sort of a partial workaround solution for getting an arpeggio across a staff like this, but now it's supported a little more directly, so I'm going to try it out. Oh, I would love it if, is that going to give me... I would. I mean, I've heard him pronounce the name, and I just and I've tried to pronounce it before. It's as far as the accent and where it is, and unfortunately, I don't read international IPA if that's what that is. But thank you for that. So this arpeggio spanning the 2 chords is not directly supported. So it's actually arpeggiating the 2 chords separately, and you're seeing separate markings here. But it is now the case, as of 4.2, that I can supposedly select that full chord. I'm going to try this out because I haven't actually tried this feature yet. Let's see how it works. I'm scared. Y'all scared? I'm scared. Oh, nope, still didn't add it directly. So I think that you must still be the case that you have to use the extend down thing. So anyhow, I clicked the handle and then used shift down to move it down. I think what's new and improved is it will do this automatically for multiple voices on a single staff or something. Anyhow, there's some improvement to that arpeggio thing. But this is how that should have been notated. And so later on, I'm going to play around with that a little more and try to fix that. So here we have a clef change mid-measure. And then here I have a clef change back to bass clef that's at the beginning of the system and therefore shows a courtesy clef. All this stuff was in MuseScore MuseScore 1. It's just gotten more sophisticated. It's gotten easier to do these things, require less hacks, but it's been possible since MuseScore 1, and that's what's kind of impressive to me. So then I have a double bar here. I've got a key signature change, right? Dynamics. I had a dynamic at the beginning. Here's a new dynamic. Here's a crescendo written using the text and a line. That used to require a workaround. Now it's supported directly. Here's a hairpin for the diminuendo. Here's more. Here's one of those cases of one of these multi-voice things that didn't used to work, but now shift down does work. So there you go. Now I can have that arpeggio extend across multiple voices. That didn't used to be possible. As of 4.2, it is. That's really new. Um, One of the first bits of so I mentioned that I did some work on that font. I did some work on chord symbols. One of the first bits of really kind of core getting into the nuts and bolts of MuseScore programming that I did had to do with things like how accidentals stack in cases like this, where you have a chord and multiple accidentals that kind of overlap each other, what order they're drawn in, which one is made closest to the note, which ones are further out, and so forth. So that was one of my first real contributions to MuseScore. They're in the process of redoing that code finally 10 years later to improve it further. I did a pretty good job of it, though, I have to say. Uh, I wonder what this is a case I look at that I'm like, yeah, I'm not crazy about how this one looks. It's because of that parentheses there that this one looks funny. And so the work that they're doing now to improve this further may or may not treat this better. But the rule that is being followed is if you have accidentals on notes an octave apart, they should be in the same column. The natural sign and the sharp sign, they're both on A's, so they should be aligned. It's not a requirement, but it's sort of a generally good practice. And so the deal is I tried to do that here, but because of the parentheses, they don't really line up. If I remove the parentheses, I guess I had added that. Let me just re-add that thing. Yeah, if I add it just without the parenthesis, you'll see it lines up a little better. But as soon as I add the parentheses, it makes things a little wonkier. So I'll be a little curious to see if this work they're doing now to further improve accidentals does a little better on cases like that. We'll find out. When I say the work is ongoing, it began a couple weeks ago, and so I think MuseScore 4.3, when it comes out in a few months, will probably have the benefit of that. All right, so let's keep going through here. We've got the arpeggios. We've got, again, the articulations and dynamics. Oh, the pedal marking, right? This used to be a hack also, and this, several years ago was made better. But the way that you would add these pedal markings, the kinds that have the little angle bracket on like that, that required a bit of hacking and manual adjustments in MuseScore 1. But by MuseScore 3, it was made easier, and in MuseScore 4, it is better still. And it continues to improve, basically, and there's still plans to improve it further. This little hack here is one that I think probably a lot of you might be curious about. Okay, so this is the cross-staff notation, first of all. You'll see that this these notes start on the bottom staff and then move up to the top staff, but they're all beamed together. If you've never seen that, it's Control, Shift, Up, Down. So Control, Shift, Down moves that note to the bottom staff. Control, Shift, Up moves it back up to the top, right? So that's how you can move notes between staves. Control, Shift, Down moves it down, Control Shift Up moves it up. You can do that any time you want for the two staves of a piano. One of the things, this is just a little silly thing, you can also do it for multiple notes at once, like I've selected a whole bunch of notes, and then Control Shift Down. I should have included more notes. Let's get more notes there. There we go. You can do it with multiple notes at a time. That is something, if I'm not mistaken, I implemented on the plane, like on an airplane, on my laptop while flying out to the FOSDEM convention, the open source convention. No, was it going to FOS? No, it wasn't going to FOSDEM. It was going to the Google Summer of Code convention, or whatever it's called. In any case, I remember fixing that on a plane while heading to a software convention and being very pleased with myself. Okay, so the thing, so other than the cross-staff notation, check out what's going on here. This right here is, can you tell what's happening as I drag it along? This is a rectangle. This is just a white rectangle. It's a graphic that I captured just making a little, screenshot of, I created it in a graphic editor or something, just a plain white graphic that I then placed such that it covers, because without that graphic, if I move that graphic away, those ties look terrible, right? I mean, they're covering the notes. And there's all sorts of settings like that where ties and slurs can intersect things. Like if you have a tie across a time signature change or across a key signature change, you'll get a similar effect. There's other cases like that where you have things that intersect other things and it looks bad. So let me walk through that process here. This graphic here, let me just recreate it first of all. I'm going to just do a quick little screen capture of a piece of white. Doesn't matter what size it is. I capture it. I'm going to paste it onto a note, and now I have that bit of white. Well, notice that that bit of white is covering the tie, but it's also covering the notes and the staff lines, right? I don't want that. So what I need to do is I need to go to the Properties panel. Well, first of all, let me actually just adjust the size of this thing. Oh, in the Properties panel, see that lock icon? If I start dragging this now, it's going to try to keep the shape of that the same, and I don't necessarily want that. I want to have independent control of the height and width so that I can make the height exactly what I want and the width exactly what I want to cover just what I want to cover, something about like that. So now it's blotting everything out, but I'm going to click here on the appearance section and I'm going to send it backwards. If I send it all the way to the back, well, now it's behind the staff also, but I'm going to bring it forwards just slightly. And there you go. It has now come in front of the tie while still, so it is now blotting out the tie, but still showing the staff lines and the notes. You could play with these arrange controls for the ties if you want, instead of playing it for the rectangle. You can do it however you want, but the bottom line is if you do this right, you get that effect where if you have ties that are intersecting notes or whatever, you can kind of make them go away. Make them disappear. And there's, again, you could do the same thing, like if this, say this hairpin here was going to extend across a bar line and you didn't want that, can I attach an image to a bar line? I think I can. I might have implemented that too. Yeah, I can attach that image to the bar line, put it there, and resize it appropriately so that it just covers up what I want, and then again send that guy backwards. Send it back, and now you'll see it's blotting out just the bar line but not the hairpin. So again, depending on the specific effect you're after, you might want to play with that control on that white rectangle, or you might need to play with it on the bar line, or you might need to play with it on the hairpin, depending on what you want blotted out and what you want to show through. But that Arrange tab is very useful. So again, when I selected the rectangle, which, can I select it now, or is it going to be hard to select because I just sent it? That's the other thing now. It's because I sent that rectangle behind the hairpin, it's actually going to be pretty hard to select now. So I have to zoom in a little bit to get there. But it's here, the Appearance tab under Properties, where those controls are. So those controls allow you to create all sorts of nice effects like that if you want, things that cross other things to create a little white space. People do that often with text also, right? If this had been the word menomoso here, I would need to take that text and bring it forwards so that now the text, and I'll delete the hairpin, so now the text also kind of has that blotting out effect there, right? So, section breaks, yes. No. 4.2 is that definitely fixes that bug, you mean. So, that was one of the things I should have showed here. So check it out. This is, section breaks as opposed to, I thought it had been fixed. Let's find out. So if there's a section break here, let me add a section break. There we go. I believe... There's the silence. and then go on, right? So section breaks work correctly now. That was a bug in 4.2, but it is fixed in 4.2.1. That section break now does the correct thing. Add some silence. Silence. Continue. Let me make sure that's not just an accident because I happen to have a rest there, but I don't think it is. Silence. Continue. So yeah, just like Cesura's, section breaks had that bug in 4.2 where instead of silence, you'd get the last note hanging over. That is fixed in 4.2.1, so there it is. If you've got a score where it doesn't seem to be working correctly, maybe post that in our discussion and support space so I can take a look. If I can confirm it, we can open up an issue on GitHub. But in general, it's definitely fixed. So I look at this score as saying, as having a little bit of a lot of things. It's by no means everything that MuseScore can do, right? Because what MuseScore can do now, I mean, the linked parts thing is huge, but it's hard to show off in one page. But for instance, let's look at my Dusk score now. Here's my Dusk octet score. If I go to the parts menu, open my parts, and then say open them all, I now have tabs for all the individual parts, and if I look at one of them, say the tenor saxophone part, it's linked, and it's linked in the sense that now if I go to the score and add a note at the beginning, say, hey, I want to put an A at the beginning. If I now go, so I added that in the score, if I now go to the tenor saxophone part, right, there it is. So that was not the case in MuseScore 1. That's been supported since MuseScore 2. So that's been like almost 10 years that's been around. But everything about how the parts work has been made a lot more flexible. Like, what if I wanted the tenor saxophone I wanted this part to not just include the tenor saxophone, but I thought it was important for it to also show the bass clarinet because it was going to be the same person playing both parts. That's a thing. And they was just going to switch between them. Then I can just click that little I, and now the tenor saxophone part shows the bass clarinet staff also. So you can totally just add instruments, remove instruments from individual parts. That is new with MuseScore 4, right? So the parts facility has gotten more flexible. And one of the things that has gotten more flexible is the handling of adjustments, and this is a new 4.2 thing that I still haven't completely wrapped my brain around. But let's take a look at some of the text here. If there's anything, I want to find something where there's like a bad collision that's specific to the part. Yeah, I don't like the way this stuff collides here in that frame, but I don't think that that's going to be something I can do anything about in the frame. I'm looking for something that's part of the text. So MuseScore is now too good at avoiding collisions. There's basically no collisions anywhere in here other than there. There's a little bit of this bit of text here is kind of close to that bit of text there. So if I move this bit of text here so that end solo is further away from that, notice that it's now changed color. That indicates that change is only in the part. That change that I just made, that customization, that drag operation, will not be in the score. So if I find that same spot in the score, I would find that adjustment was not there. And then there's all sorts of controls now that didn't used to exist to I don't know where that end solo is, but is that not? Yeah, I forgot what rehearsal letter it was. Yeah. Oh, yeah, those aren't real rehearsal letters either. Those are just text markings, so they don't show up because this was MuseScore 4, MuseScore 1, and it didn't fully support that yet. So anyhow, the control over, like, if I take this thing here and move, there's that end solo marking right there, right? So notice I moved it in the part, and it's not moved in the score. I think that was that specific thing was the case before, but you had no control over it. Now there's control over it. If you want those adjustments synchronized, you can have them synchronized. You can say synchronize the position, and now when I drag this, I think I have to make the drag in the score. If I drag it in the score, then I go to the part. Yeah, there you go. So if I drag it in the score and then visit the part, because it's synchronized, it's synchronized. So anyhow, there's now more controls over that sort of stuff as of 4.2. So there you go. So Stephen, you are absolutely right about the two fermatas. So this is one of those things that when I said that MuseScore has never done a great job of this, MuseScore is still looking at this fermata as basically doubling the length of beat 3. So it's going to double the length of that note and not this note. So it's not necessarily going to do exactly what you want. And it's impossible to always guess what you want. MuseScore 3 would have the same issue. You'd have all sorts of cases where you have multiple fermatas in different places, and it would be impossible to get the exact effect. And that remains true in MuseScore 4. But at least it doesn't do terrible things like continue to hold this note while the other staff moves on, which unfortunately MuseScore 4 did until 4.2. So yes, what it did is it actually lengthened both of those two beats because of this fermata. Now, could I get around that by playing with the playback here and turning this guy down to 100% stretch? Maybe. Let's find out. I don't actually know. I'm going to find out. Yeah, there you go. So by playing with those stretches, you can get other effects. Let's make this one longer just to be sure. So by playing with the individual time stretch of the two fermatas, you can get different effects. It's still going to be the case that there's going to be some things you want to do that you can't get. But here, I didn't even need an invisible note. But yeah, there's all sorts of tricks you can use to try to finagle the playback to do what you want it to do. But at least in this case, first, the big thing is it's no longer terrible, which it used to, for MuseScore 4 until 4.2, it did really bad things in cases like this of the two staves basically being out of sync and one note would bleed over into the next measure. So that's fixed, and it is fixed to the point where by playing with their individual stretches, you can get a variety of different effects. Whether you can get everything, I doubt it. But there you go. I'll play that again. Love it. So there you go. All right. So this has been, just a look at 4.2.1, but also 4.2, also MuseScore 4, but also just looking at the whole history of MuseScore. It's just been kind of a smorgasbord of different aspects of things you might want to know about what MuseScore can do, what it's, when things came on board, and I don't know, hope that something in that was of interest to someone and that some people learned something, but there you go. Main takeaway here is 4.2.1 fixes a whole ton of stuff, 4.2 fixed a bunch of stuff, added some features. 4.2.1 fixed some bugs that were in 4.2. So absolutely you want 4.2.1. And the work is now moving forward on MuseScore 4.3, which is going to have some really cool new features. And I'm really looking forward to when MuseScore 4.3 comes out, probably in a few months. So by all means, go ahead and grab yourself 4.2.1. And tomorrow will be the music masterclass. I will be we'll be doing some ear training exercises. Those of you who are gold level members may have already seen the project that I posted. It's sort of an ear training project in which I was working on singing the bass line to a portion of the Bach B minor Mass, and we're going to do some other ear training stuff, and then we'll look at some more music that people have posted, and just keep doing what we're doing. Thanks everyone. See you next time.